Hey, it is your buddy, Peace and Harmony, with you here today. Much love going out to all the beautiful, empowered harmonizers. We are zooming in and focusing in a little bit more in depth on how to let go of a trauma bond that has been induced by a individual who maybe has a personality disorder, a cluster B personality disorder, someone who might be narcissistic, someone who might be borderline. We're not here to diagnose and treat, but we're talking about when you've been on the receiving end of a number of different, what you might call sort of emotional abuse episodes that creates and results in a trauma bond within you and other people in your life. And this can become quite inhibitory, which means very difficult to sort of act and move beyond, to have behavior that moves beyond sort of that small, sort of beaten down mindset or attitude. And attitude is everything. Oftentimes, people who have been in a relationship with someone who is narcissistic or psychopathic, someone who is narcissistic has a pathological sense of self-importance and coupled with a lack of empathy, which means they have a deficit in the way that they relate and attach to and bond with others, particularly that of a deficit of feeling and emotions. There is no emotional connection, what you might consider a relationship in the way that really, humanity is designed to operate, which means there's always going to be some percent of the population which has narcissistic or psychopathic behavior disorders, and it is reflected and hurtful towards others, which means this is just part of their everyday existence. A narcissist, this is just how, they view themselves in life opportunities with a insatiable desire to control and have power over. So it doesn't ever sort of get satisfied. So if you're in a relationship with someone like this, you're going to experience probably something that is considered a trauma bond, meaning something that your own hurt is then misconstrued as love, and it becomes sort of this very caustic and toxic relationship. A trauma bond is then mistaken for love. Love is patient, love is kind. Love is not conditional. It's not based on specific situations, behaviors, or accomplishments. So, conditional love is what you're going to see and experience, especially with a malignant narcissist, which means unless you have specific qualifications to help them get what they want. So if you can help prop them up, give them attention, admire them, to the end of time, meaning, sort of and sacrifice yourself in order to give them the helm, the control, that insatiable need for power and control over others. This is how they operate. And oftentimes this will require them sort of being damaging and destructive to others through the things that they do and say, that are hurtful in nature and designed to be hurtful in nature, so it can shut somebody down, so it can annihilate another perspective that to them is challenging and that they are not capable of dealing with because of this lack of empathy and a pathological sense of self-importance. They basically are like the big hat, no cattle. They're just going to flip you off, put their nose in the air, and then further scrutinize you and explain and justify why you are the cause of their upset, And so people then, again, adopt and absorb a lot of the negative feelings that this person is extolling or putting out there. This will create a trauma bond, meaning that part of your feeling of love is connected with this betrayal. It's connected with this violation of respect, boundaries, and standards that you have and hold within. But if it's been annihilated enough, they then become, non-functional boundaries, non-functional standards, which means you feel that people walk all over you. They are making fun of you. They're jabbing you. They're rolling their eyes at you. That this is purposeful hurt. When they do this, it's designed to create a viewpoint of negativity around you. And even though there's nothing that you have done, it is all in their mind and a confabulation of their thought process based on sort of this a opportunistic viewpoint. So we're not talking about a healthy, positive, communication. We're talking about manipulation here, which is usually not fair because it's designed to undermine others, and their experience. So shut you down, shut you out, shut you up, kick you to the curb. Whatever explanation you want to give means, basically, not give you a chance. So if you've experienced this, not given a chance long enough, you will develop, learned helplessness and learned hopelessness as well. Learned helplessness basically is the feeling that no behavior that I, engage in will help to get me where I want to go. It feels, essentially broken, or, not with energy, motivation, enthusiasm, or passion. That sort of excitement, that you have to look forward to something. That whole circuit gets shut down. And when you get into psychopathic, they have no conscience. This is the problem with someone who is psychopathic. They have no sense of right or wrong. And we're talking on a very deep-seated level, which means it is not only not going to change, it's resistive to change, and it gets more pronounced with time. Meaning, they will engage, I would say, in more opportunistic behaviors, high-risk behaviors, that keep them stimulated and feeling thrilled or excited, which is really what they are addicted to. The narcissist and psychopath, they are sort of in that high adrenaline sort of relationship or lifestyle, staying up really late, doing, just breaking just sort of a normal, healthy routine of things. And, oftentimes then this is involved with sort of creating and plotting against others, known as the, we're not going to get into that, but when you're in a trauma bond, part of how they get power is they distort the way that you see yourself. This is part of how they win. In other words, trauma, which is an injury, which is something traumatic, which is something alarming or upsetting or causes concern. And when this becomes sort of an ongoing feeling, that becomes a trauma bond, which means and then also I think what you would consider almost, post-traumatic stress syndrome, where your attachment to others is sort of always ladled with fear and uncertainty. Feeling that you don't have a grip or can't get a grip, but the other individual is the one who has the grip. So you then develop a feeling of learned helplessness, which means really no behavior that you can do or engage in will change the situation. Just like when we talk about that study in psychology that talks about that elephant that was a baby elephant and it was tied to a pole. And you can research this and you can understand perhaps if you have engaged or felt this way. Then the just as a quick recap or an abstract of that study is basically with the elephant, they were tied, to this pole so that they wouldn't wander off and sort of explore their own instinct. And, they wanted the baby to be trained to stay put, to sort of not reinforce its exploring behaviors, its eating behaviors, etc. So it was tied up. And then every time, that elephant tried to move, it was held back. So whatever many yards. And so the over a period of time, then that baby elephant learned that it could not move beyond that 8-foot radius or whatever the radius of the trainer is. So eventually, the elephant then sort of essentially gives up. And so they just sort of stay put. They don't go anywhere. And then the trainer can then cut the rope, and then that baby elephant is learned not to wander. Otherwise, it'll result in pain and resistance. And I'm not sure if they, you can study this. I don't think they engage in any sort of adverse conditioning, such as an electric shock every time they try to move forward. That is also adverse conditioning. So I think a lot of people experience this in a trauma bond. They experience that adverse conditioning, which means they have pain when they move forward, when they're trying to take care of themselves, when they're trying to vocalize their needs or concerns. Basically, that whole circuit has been shut down. So you're taught to not speak up, that you are not credible, that you don't have a valid viewpoint, you don't have a valid attitude or perspective. It is not invited, it is shut down. The narcissist will be the one who is the only one. So that's the problem with a narcissist. They don't oftentimes engage with a sense of empathy and a feeling that others are valuable or important. They will devalue and discard others. This is what they do. So in the trauma bond, once again, they cause a distortion of the way you feel yourself to be. So if they can give you sort of that negative loop within, then all they have to do is reinforce that long enough, and then you'll have a negative sense of self, which is known as self-esteem, low self-esteem, or insecurity. So how many of you have felt that as a result that you picked up or learned from this person? So realize that there's, over 7 billion people on the planet. This is one person. This, the problem with a narcissist, though, is they try, they've got the big hat, no cattle. They will obstruct others and be a distraction. So no, they are bigger. They try to act bigger than life. Nothing else is important. Nothing else compares to me. I am the one who is right and make way for me. There can be no other. They just will. It's just sort of like an emotional snowplow, an emotional steamroller where they basically plow others. Yeah, you stay over there. You get the bleacher seats. It's me who's in the control here. So they try to, and then with enough learned helplessness and then learned hopelessness, which is the emotional, tandem. The emotional, equivalent, I would say, is to understand that then you learn hopelessness, which really when you feel, the dark days of your soul, the dark night of the soul. I mean, how many books have been written about, these times? I call them the valley moments where you sort of, begin to come within and be humble. The narcissist does not have humility, or they do not really operate out of that, humility and gratitude, and realize that there's, more important things going on in the big picture that involve you. It is not all about you and what you desire. So there becomes a very, very challenging aspect when you are in a relationship with these individuals. If you're married or have been previously married, engaged to be wedded, have these people in your family or your workplace, where they will then engage in sabotaging behaviors to you in order to create reinforce this trauma bond through a number of different manipulation tactics, including what they call triangulation, or sort of using another as a repository or a resource to put negative into you. So now they end up sort of taking on a number of people. If they can plant seeds of negativity, this is just what they do. This is, this is just classic textbook narcissist behavior. Some people call it, they're flying monkeys, which end up doing more of the dirty work. So they're then able to adopt the attitude, which is corrupted, but is designed to further them and their interests, which oftentimes has nothing to do with reality. It has nothing to do with truth. So these people end up sort of causing others to live in denial. And then I would say, to a certain degree, people then hit a rock bottom and they no longer want to live in this way. They no longer want to be mistreated. They don't want to have this sort of pressure, tension of this sort of very high, highly resistant to change, sort of very anger-based or hatred-based violation of others. That results in the trauma bond, that results in you seeing yourself as less than, which results in seeing yourself as broken, which you are not, but that is the flawed thinking, the erroneous thinking that the recipient ends up engaging in, oftentimes for a long period of time. And it will affect your own brain structure, your own amygdala, your hippocampus, that which is involved in your fight or flight or your memory. And so, you really have to realize the severity of being in a trauma bond. This is not healthy. This is something that aggravates sort of nihilistic behaviors towards yourself, self-deprecating feelings, feelings of self-hatred, anxiety. I can't make it. I can't, make it on my own. So out of these, this is the thought process then which emerges from a trauma bond relationship where you then, your love then becomes conditional on pleasing this person, which then is designed to shut them up or shut them down or essentially give them what they want. And then you end up sort of losing, because it's the sort of take all scenario that the narcissist and psychopath will engage in as part of the trauma bond. So that if you've been sort of steeped and engaged in this for a long period of time, healthy relationships based on boundaries and standards and respect of you become, a non-experience, a non-reality for you. You then become chronically insecure. Post-traumatic stress syndrome can then ensue and follow. We'll go more about that, but the trauma bond, you have to realize it is there and causes that people-pleasing behavior in order to, in other words, you must then please the person who is hurting you so as to reduce the stop of hurt that you are feeling. So then people end up giving in. They're not able to stand up and maintain their own boundaries and standards. This, then creates a very horrific and terrorizing feeling. People cannot make it. They feel that they're invisible, that people are, hurting them or out to get them. This is sort of what they create. And, unfortunately, then people become complicit and then, are unable to know how to deal with it. So they just shut down, they shut up, they can't speak to it. They cannot process it because they don't know where they have found themselves in a trauma bond. Or in other words, they're so much in a trauma bond, they cannot see what sort of relationship that they are in and that it is distracting, of your energy. Other people might say, can't you see that person is hurtful to you, and they will not be able to, if they're a flying monkey, they will not validate, what you are going through. They will only validate what the narcissist or psychopath will do. This is part of their deliberate and pre-calculated effect towards getting what they want. This has been set up even way before you were on the scene or you've met this person. This is just how they are. So people then end up, so you have to sort of unlearn a lot of that negativity and realize that is just spewing forth from this individual. You don't have to be the recipient. Do not take it personally. And, so you have to unlearn the trauma bonds. And, eventually it's a giving up of power to somebody. So you have to sort of take that back, which is to unpack the learned, negative thinking about yourself, which is known in psychology as negative validation, where you're feeling, you're defined by what you're not rather than what you are. You are not this. You are not, in other words, this becomes a negative validation where then the person then adopts a negative self-esteem, an insecurity, a social anxiety. So, it's kind of like having a shark within all the time, but you didn't even let the shark in. Get that shark out of your emotional body. That one with, that's just trying to break you down. Bite, will take a bite out of you and make sure that you continue to feel the sting. I mean, this is not pleasant for a lot of people. It is very disempowering. Also, to be a people pleaser just sort of reinforces then, that sort of trauma bond, which means, they, you feel that you must appease them or that there is something wrong with you. You might have then bought the story that there's something, inherently permanently flawed about you, which is the furthest from the truth. This is just the end result or the symptom of a relationship with a narcissist, which is that insecurity, that is really a symptomatic of a trauma bond. So you want to detach and stop, looking up to this person as having any sort of control or relevance, and does not have the authority to treat you this way, or make an opportunistic assessment. In other words, which is not based on truth and reality. It is based on their own desires, fantasy, and things that they are following. Oftentimes, they are on a very sort of grandiose, attitude, which means that they, then, in order to cover things up, they have to act bigger than and always edge people out. This is just a classic manipulation behavior. You must see this perhaps a lot. So you have to unlearn this and say, wow, that does not have to be the center of my world. It is not my world. And it's okay to have a realistic assessment of this individual. Even if the narcissist wants you to have that sort of grandiose assessment of them, don't adhere, don't adopt that. Detach. I do not adopt that attitude. I adopt a healthy attitude. I have a positive sense of myself, and I look on myself with positivity, and I'm able to do that. I am a good person. Contrary to what they're trying to create for you, you have to define yourself from within and protect that, because this is their goal. Their goal is to get that sort of golden nugget within you, but that is you. That is your own self-esteem and how you value yourself. So just because you have been devalued and discarded by somebody who is a narcissist or a psychopath, it does not mean that that is the correct assessment of yourself. The bottom line is they do not create your bottom line. You create your bottom line. You create your sense of self and define yourself by the positive as you know it to be true, and it is so. So don't let them rob you of that. That's such an emotional theft, which really creates a lot of impoverished thinking, which creates a lot of social anxiety, post-traumatic stress syndrome, which is always inhibitory towards the individual. They're not able to move forward. They're not able to go after their interests or relationships that would be positive, healthy, and supportive. They become like that elephant, which has a ball and chain. They're only able to go so far. So you have to realize, where have you inhibited and limited yourself as a result of this painful trauma bond relationship, where you had mistaken love really for punishment and hurt. And it was not building and supportive of you, which is designed to reinforce the positive of who you are. You are kind. You are gentle. You are patient. You are, in other words, reclaiming sort of that lost inner treasure becomes really part of the important journey moving forward. And I call that pod thinking, or positive orderly direction thinking, behaving, feeling, and becoming. You have to make sure you're keeping yourself on that path, especially when it comes to a crossroad, a junction. Are you going to fall for the negative thinking of self, or are you going to adhere to the truth? Are you going to adhere to value of yourself? Are you going to claim your I am in the positive, or are you going to fall prey to the negative? You have to decide. In the privacy of your heart and in these videos, you need to be able to make a really sort of gut level decision. And this might take a while and a process, but to come to that positive assessment of self is so crucial. But it is very difficult for those who have been surrounded and inundated with false accusations, people who are self-centered and have an ulterior motive, and to take you down would be part of the game plan. That's part of the blueprint. That's part of the playbook. I mean, it is textbook narcissistic behavior. And unfortunately, if you have found yourself up against this, just say, I have reclaimed myself in this moment. I have reclaimed my positive sense of self in this moment. I reclaim my power. I reclaim my I am. I embrace and love myself in an unconditional manner in this moment. You have to reclaim your I am in this moment, even if you're just a very simple statement, and that you are to protect and preserve and connect with your higher power in that decision-making process, connected to source, connected to your angels, connected to your archangels, connected to your savior, connected to the source, connected to your amen, connected to your sacred space, whatever it is you want to call it. I would recommend having a name that you give it to yourself, your sacred place, your happy place, your warm and fuzzy space where you really feel alive and comforted. You are okay here and you are safe. It is the absence of love, absence of fear, and then the experience of unconditional positive regard. That is really where you are meant to exist, not in a fear state, not in a trauma bonded state, not under a constant attack and having to explain and justify yourself. This becomes very debilitating. And so make a decision to detach from that sort of really problematic emotional flow. Do you see how they'll send you, the trauma bond will send you into what I call NOD thinking, just no. Negative orderly direction thinking, behaving, and feeling. So it's almost as if you have an option or a choice. Do you choose to be happy? Do you choose to be unhappy? Abraham Lincoln, we're about as happy as we make our minds up to be. Take some of these items seriously. Take your happiness seriously. Take your awareness seriously. Take your healing seriously. And being able to see through the lies and the paranoia is important. You really need to be able to develop that sort of emotional x-ray vision where you're able to see through the manipulation, see through the entrapment, see through the attempt at enmeshment, see through the attempt to negate your perspective as valuable or important. Just see, this is the trauma bond. They're trying to break you down, and this, you do not need to opt into that. You have a choice. This is your boundary and your standards. Just like in the book that I'm working on, it's very important that you understand what this feels like within you. And the boundaries and standards, which means after this, this is where I am, and this is how I protect myself because I have a viewpoint that is valuable and important. Yes, you are special. Yes, you are unique. Yes, maybe you have come up against a trauma bond. You need to detach from the body-mind connection to that and say, unfortunately, this has been wonderful, but I do not wish to engage. This is internally. You have to develop an internal dialogue, which is conducive to self-support, even if, you have not received this from another. I am valuable. I am important. I am magnificent. I am aware of my own self-preservation and then therefore my own dreams and my own excitement. And I do not need to tolerate the sort of emotional whiplash or emotional lashing out of others that will reinforce that trauma bond. So you need to say no. You need to be able to put your foot down and have the courage enough to have a positive sense of self-regard. I have the courage, I have the audacity, I have the boldness to declare my boundaries and standards and engage in positive, orderly direction, thinking, feeling, behaving, and becoming. And with that, you claim your inner victory, not an inner victim. Get used to this and trust the process. Be able to reclaim this many times throughout the hour, many times throughout the minute, many times throughout the day, so that you will then be able to engage in this automatically. And if you do that long enough and strong enough, you will be able to develop a sense of security and serenity and positive self-regard within that really cannot be damaged by whatever sort of negatively fueled statements or deep-seated anger within another. You will become immune. You will not become sort of terrorized or taken down by that sort of emotional ambushing that creates a trauma bond and reinforces it. You need to say no. That's a great viewer question. Thank you. This is your buddy, Peace and Harmony, with you here today. And I hope that these videos do help. Please share, please subscribe. And for goodness sake, please donate for more great tools, videos, discussion, and support. Peace in, peace without. Have a beautiful day.